And then I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Barbara.
All righty.
And you can tell your little vignette.
Okay, vignette. I was in my mid-20s in Norman, Oklahoma, working on my master's in library science when I was taking a ramp onto the freeway, and I saw the two cars in front of me pull over to the side, and I didn't know why, but they seemed all right. So I was pulling around them when I realized that the second car had rear-ended the first car, and the first car was pulling a trailer, and the trailer had a horse in it, and the horse's leg was half out, half in the trailer. And I glanced over at the young couple whose eyes were wide. And then I looked up, and as I went past, the man in the cab of the truck got out and reached in and took his rifle. I never thought that he was going to hurt the people, but I feared that he felt he had to kill the horse. And I never heard a shot. I don't know what happened next, but that has been festering in my mind all this time. That's the end of my vignette.
So you left without knowing?
I drove onto the freeway. There's no stopping on an arm ramp unless you're pulled over, and I went on.
Wow.
Wow.
It sticks with me.
I'll bet.
It would stick with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Huh.
All right. I will remove spotlight. Jane, do you have something to tell? Jane?
She was going to make a phone.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's switch to here.
Okay.
Do you want to
I can
do it next? Okay. So what we're going to do then is this gets turned red, and you come over there, and you're going to have to position yourself so you show, and I'm going to put you on spotlight.
Cool hat.
You gotta have a hat.
Like the hat. Good hat.
Have a lot of hats.
What did it say?
Yes, she does.
Yeah. Good day.
Okay.
Well, you all know about King Arthur, and shortly after he pulled that sword out of the stone, he was still a very young man. He was just riding around his kingdom, and he wandered off to another kingdom by mistake, and that king took him captive. And he said, "You're my prize now, and I have the right to kill you, but I won't kill you because I have a pressing problem that I need the answer to. So I'm going to let you go and return here in 1 year's time with the answer to my question. I can see you're an honorable man, and I know you'll return. The question I'm asking you is what on earth is it that women really want? And if you come back with an answer, and I'll know whether or not it's right, in a year, I will spare your life." Well, he went and talked Arthur to everyone he knew, and people that he didn't know, and people that he got referred to. He even talked to the librarian. Finally, people in the town were saying, "You know, there's one person that always has the right answer. She knows, but she's a witch, and she exacts a heavy price for her answers. So you best be careful." And finally, the year was almost up. The year was going to be up the next day, and he had no options. He had to go to the witch. So he went to the witch and said, "I'm going to be slain if I don't have the answer to this question tomorrow. What is it that women really want?" Well, I'll tell you. I'm prepared for that. you like to know the price first? Yes. Thank you, lady. Like to get married. Arthur looked at the witch. He looked at her long, dirty claws, her disheveled hair. There was some mucus running off of the side of her face that had dried there. She was bent over. She was the ugliest woman he had ever seen. And he kind of thought, what is she going to think of? She said, I had my eye on Sir Gawain. Sir Gawain was one of the bravest knights of the Round Table and Arthur's best friend. And Arthur said, I can't do that. But you best think about it. You've got until tomorrow. So he went to his friend Gawain and he told him. He said, you know the witch, you know what she looks like. And this is the only, so I can't do that to you. And Sir Gawain said, my liege, I would do anything to spare your life. You must do that. I will marry the witch. Set it up. Do it. So with a heavy heart, Arthur went back to the witch. He said, all right, tell me, and you shall marry Sir Gawain. Witch thought for a moment. She said, what women really want, above all else, is autonomy. They want the right to choose, the expectation that they can make their own decisions. That's pretty simple. Next day, Arthur appeared before the king with his answer, and the king thought that was a pretty wise answer. He said, I'm going to let you go. I think you've solved my problem. Thank you so much. He went back, and within the week, Sir Gawain's wedding happened. And the witch was at her worst. She came in, she dragging herself. Her clothes were bedraggled and filthy. It looked like her nose had gotten even longer. It was curving down and the chin curved up and they almost met. And she was hunched over and spilling her food and coughing and spitting and just foul. Just everybody, all the guests felt awkward and the wedding party broke up rather early. And Sir Gawain was going towards the bedroom, just kind of steeling himself for the night. He opened the door, and on the bed was this beautiful woman, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And he looked at her, and he could see traces of the features, some of the features of the witch, and he knew it was she. He said, what? What is this? And she said, you were very kind to me. You went through the ceremony, you kissed me after the ceremony, you ignored my acting, you ignored the way I was acting, you ignored the way I looked, everything. You were such a gentleman, so I will be like this. This will be my appearance and my demeanor for half of the time. You can either have me this way at night for our intimate moments, or you can have me this way during the day when you're out and about and your friends will see me. It's your decision. Thought, during the day, people would see this beautiful woman that's my wife. Then at night, she'd be, so maybe at night, when we're alone, I would have the pleasure of her, and in the daytime, I don't care if people think I was still inside. Finally, he turned to the witch and he said, you decide. She said, now you shall have me like this all the time. Because you gave me what women want.
I love it. That's a version of Lady Ragnell.
Yeah, that was great. That's a great story, and you did a wonderful job telling it.
Oh, thank you.
You really did. Okay, so
I had to practice my witch's laugh.
it was good. You don't have a story. You don't have a story today. Chris, do you have a story? Okay. Is Jane gone?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Do you have a story tonight?
No, I have a very small vignette.
Just like
That's
Barbara.
what I'm gonna call it now. I have a friend, this is a true story.
Okay,
who I
wait,
swim with.
let me switch you.
Okay,
I've got to remove the spotlight from this and then put the spotlight on you. And then I have to turn the computer around so people can see you.
oh, the lighting's horrible. Okay, this is more of, I collect cartoons for the day, and this was the cartoon for the day a couple of weeks ago. So I have a friend that I swim with, and her husband is going through dementia. He's losing his mind. But it's, not without its frustrations, but it has its amusing times too. So she told me that he came in and into the kitchen, and he said, "My left foot hurts." And so she looked down, and he was wearing two right shoes. That's it. I just love the image. Who's next?
Okay, thank you, Jane. That was an interesting insight.
And something for us all to remember that time when our left foot hurts. Now I'm like,
Yeah, check your shoes.
Okay, so now I do the background and I'm going to tell a story. And actually, I could tell a couple of stories since we don't have very many.
kind of like our stories.
Because, I need to practice my stories to keep them
Uh-huh.
in my mind. So if you don't mind.
We do not.
All right, so I think the first story I'm going to tell is a folktale from Japan, and I'm sure you've all heard it, or maybe some of you. It's called The Storyteller and the Samurai. Long time ago, a storyteller, a master of his art, was making his way through the countryside. And as the day progressed and the sun began to get lower in the sky on the west, he felt a grumbling in his stomach, and his legs were getting tired of walking, and he knew he needed to find a place to rest for the night and hopefully some food to eat. Well, his prayers were answered soon after this thought, because as he rounded the corner, there at the base of a small hill was a dojo, a school of swordsmanship, where young aspiring swordsmen come to study under a samurai, a master swordsman. And in those days, it was the custom that a traveler could earn a free night's lodging and a free meal if he would fight a duel with one of the students. And so the storyteller left the main path, walked up the little path towards the door, was about to knock, and then he thought he would not fare well in a duel with even a young student. He was an old man, and he was tired. He didn't want to fight the duel, and so he didn't knock. And he was about to turn around to leave, and then he had an idea. And he went ahead and knocked on the door. Well, the door opened up, and here's this tall, strong, young swordsman who said, "Grandfather, what can I do for you?" And the storyteller said, "Well, I would like to challenge the samurai to a duel." "Oh, no, grandfather, you can't do that. How about you challenge a first-year student?" "No," said the storyteller. "I challenge the master swordsman of this dojo." No, said the young man. How about a second-year student?" "No, I insist," said the storyteller. "I challenge the samurai, the master swordsman of this dojo." "Okay," said the young man, "follow me." And he led the storyteller into the dojo, and they went to the big practice hall where the swordsman would practice having duels. And when they got in there, the young man announced to all the other students, this man has challenged the samurai to a duel. Someone go get the samurai. And all of the other students stared in disbelief at this frail old man. Why was he challenging the samurai? Because you see, when you challenge a student to a duel, the duel is fought with wooden swords. But when you challenge a samurai, the duel is fought with swords of steel. And the loser is often injured and sometimes killed. Well, it didn't take too long for the samurai to come into the practice hall carrying his sword. And he said, someone give this man a sword. And so one of the students brought a sword over. The samurai took it and he put it on the floor and he stared at the samurai but didn't say anything. There was a moment of awkward silence. The two men stared at each other, and finally the samurai said, I accept your challenge. Now pick up your sword and let's begin the duel. At that point, the storyteller began to speak. Long, long ago, in a place far away, there was a magnificent mountain. And at the base of this mountain, there was a village. And next to the village was a beautiful stream that went by. And at the edge of this village, there lived an old man who every day would get up very early in the morning before the sun was even up. And he would go down to the stream and he would listen to the fish tell him stories about the places they've been, the people they've seen, and the stories they've. And then the man would go into the village and sit with his friends and share those stories. Well, while the storyteller was telling this story, the samurai lowered his sword and then he announced, I surrender. You have won the duel. What, said his students? How could he have won the duel? He didn't even pick up his sword. And the samurai looked at his students. He said, how many times have I told you the importance of staying in the present, staying in the moment during the duel so you are not distracted? This man took me to a time long ago and a place far away. He could have slain me at will. And so it was that the students of that dojo learned an important lesson, and the storyteller got a free meal and the night's lodging. Such is the power of a well-told story.
I love that tale, and you get better and better at it.
Well, that's the thing, you know, as I tell stories, I do get better.
Change the ending to a well-told tale. This rolls a little better.
Okay.
A well-told tale.
So, I'll tell
But
another
it was
story.
beautiful. It's great.
And had you heard it before?
No,
Oh.
no, that's wonderful.
Had you heard it?
I missed you.
I have not.
Oh, well, then I think both Jane and Barbara had heard it before.
We have.
Of course, Chris has heard it many times. But it's one of my favorite stories when I am camping up in the Sierras with my friends. I tell stories in the evening, and and when we go on these mule pack trips, there's 5 nights that we spend camping out at about 11,000 feet elevation. And the very first story I tell is that one because I think it's a good introduction to the power of story. And the whole idea that we promote the ancient art of storytelling because it engages people. It takes you to a different place and a different time. And each one of you had your own images inside of your head as I was telling that story. And therefore, it's really an active interchange between the teller and the listener. So I like that story because it gets that point across, I think, about as well as any story. Okay, so what do I do next? How many of you here have heard Dr. DeSoto? Of course, Chris has. You haven't heard?
I don't know. I'll know.
Well,
But I won't mind hearing it again. Anything to do with the car?
no.
No.
Dr. DeSoto is, when I first started telling stories, I used children's literature because I was a kindergarten teacher. And there's lots of great stories. You should know it. William Steig did Sylvester and the Magic Pillow. Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. And you don't know that. And he also wrote, lots of William Steig stories. The main characters, all the characters are animals because he was an illustrator. In fact, he was an illustrator for New Yorker magazine before he started writing children's books. But he illustrated his own books, and he loved drawing animals as animated characters in these stories. One of his books was made into a movie. It was called Shrek.
Oh.
There we go.
And I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so this one is a story by William Steig, and it's called Dr. DeSoto. Dr. DeSoto was a very good dentist. He also happened to be a mouse. And because he was a mouse, he had a very small chair for his patients to sit in, and gophers and moles and chipmunks and squirrels loved coming to Dr. DeSoto because he was set up for working with small animals, and he had small, dainty dental tools and delicate fingers to work on the mouths, and they just loved going to. But he was also able to work with bigger animals like pigs or sheep. And what he would do is he would climb up a ladder and ask them to open their mouth. And if the mouth was big enough, he could step into it and work. Otherwise, he was on the ladder and he would work, and they loved it. And really big animals like horses and cows, he would wear a harness and have a rope tied onto it. And the rope went up to the ceiling. There was a pulley, and it went down to a winch. And his assistant, who also happened to be his wife, would turn the crank, and up would go Dr. DeSoto up to the horse's mouth or the cow's mouth. And they were definitely big enough he could step in, wearing rubber booties, of course, to keep his feet dry. And he would work on their teeth. And they loved him too, because he had such dainty tools and of the dentistry, to work on their mouths. He was very gentle, and he was just a very popular dentist. However, he refused to work on animals deemed to be dangerous, and his sign said so. His sign hung outside, and it said, Dr. DeSoto, dentist, cats and other dangerous animals refuse treatment. Well, one day, and the way he would enforce that, he had a 2-story office. The waiting room was downstairs, and the door was always locked. And if someone came, they'd ring the doorbell. Dr. DeSoto would look out the 2nd-story window and see who it is, and he would not let in even the meekest looking cat or any other animal that he deemed to be dangerous. Well, one day the doorbell rang, and Dr. DeSoto went over to the window, and his wife did too, and they looked out, and there was a fox, a well-dressed fox, holding onto his jaw, and he had a towel or something wrapped around his head, and he was moaning and groaning. And Dr. DeSoto leaned out the window and he said, Sir, didn't you see my sign? I can't let you in. And the fox said, oh, please help me. My tooth is killing me. Well, Dr. DeSoto stepped back from the window, looked at his wife, and said, he's really in pain. You think it's safe to help him? And his wife said, well, I don't know. If we help him and get him out of his pain, surely he wouldn't hurt us. Let's give it a try, said Dr. DeSoto, and he pushed the button to unlock the door. Door opened, the fox came up the stairs to the 2nd floor. Dr. DeSoto said, sit down on the floor and take that bandage thing off your head and open your mouth. And he pulled the ladder over and he climbed up and he looked inside. He was disgusted because not only did this fox had a really infected tooth. He also had very bad breath. And so he said, you do have an infected tooth. I can pull it out today and have a new tooth made this afternoon, and then you come back tomorrow and we'll put the new tooth in. Do you want me to go ahead? And the fox said, please, please, anything to end this pain. And so Dr. DeSoto said, I'm going to have to put you under because it hurts to pull the tooth out. So I want you to close your mouth and take a deep breath as I put this mask over you. Take a deep breath. Fox did, and he drifted off to sleep. So Dr. DeSoto got a pole and opened the fox's mouth and popped it open and started to work. And as he was working, the fox was off in dreamland. And he was mumbling, and he said, oh, how I love them raw, with just a pinch of salt and a fine white wine. Well, Dr. DeSoto could imagine what the fox was dreaming about, and he did not like it. So he went ahead with the job. He put a clamp on the rotten tooth and tied a rope to it. The rope went up to the ceiling, around the pulley, and down to the winch on the floor. And he climbed down the ladder, and the two of them worked together to crank the winch until pop, out came the tooth. Dr. DeSoto rushed up the ladder, stuffed some gauze in the empty hole where the tooth was to stop the bleeding, and then waited for the fox to wake up. When the fox woke up, Dr. DeSoto said, we have removed the tooth. Now you need to go home. We'll make you a new tooth this afternoon. Come back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning and we'll put the new tooth in your mouth. So the fox was still quite groggy as he got out of the chair, and he staggered down the stairs and went out. And as he was walking home, he started to think, would it be shabby of me to eat those two after I got the new tooth? It would really test out the tooth. Meanwhile, back in the dentist office, Mrs. DeSoto said, did you hear what he said? Raw with a pinch of salt and fine white wine. We should have never let him in. Dr. DeSoto said, you're right. He's a fox. Foxes are wicked, wicked animals. We should have never let him in, but we did. And when I start a job, I finish a job. I've always done that. My father always did that. That's what I was taught to do. We've got to finish the job. But said Mrs. DeSoto, we're in danger. He's going to eat us. And so that night they went to bed and tossed and turned and tried talking about different ideas and were really worried. And finally they came up with an idea and they went to sleep. Well, the next morning at 10 o'clock, the fox arrives and he's not in pain. And he pushes the doorbell and Dr. DeSoto looks out and says, okay, I'm unlocking the door. He pushes the button to unlock the door. The fox comes running up, sits down on the floor with a smile on his face and opens his mouth wide. And so the dentist pulls the ladder over and he steps inside the fox's mouth and what? The fox's mouth shuts with a mouse inside. And then he opens it up. I'm just joking. Dr. DeSoto said, this is serious business. Don't joke around with me. And he took the gauze out and threw it on the floor. And his wife was bringing the gold tooth in. And the fox saw that gold tooth and he was impressed. And he decided at that moment, I'm going to use that gold tooth to eat these two after it's in. So his wife gave Dr. DeSoto the tooth and climbed up the ladder. He put it in and attached it to the other teeth so it wouldn't fall out. And then he climbed back out and he said, now, Mrs. DeSoto and I just recently developed a new formula that when painted onto the teeth, penetrates the enamel and protects your teeth for the rest of your life so you'll never, ever have cavities or an infected tooth. Do you want to try our treatment? And the fox said, oh, yes, because the fox did not like pain. He didn't want to have to go through that again. And so Mrs. DeSoto brought over a bucket with a paintbrush in it, handed it to the dentist, who climbed up, told the fox to open his mouth, and he started painting the teeth. And he was sort of humming as he did it. And Mrs. DeSoto was on the floor pointing out places he had missed. And we had covered the teeth all together. The fox, by the way, was really anticipating eating them when this was all done. And the dentist stepped out and he said, now close your mouth tightly for 60 seconds. So the fox did that. And he was watching the clock. When the 60 seconds were up, he tried to open his mouth and he couldn't. It was glued shut. Oh, I forgot to tell you, said Dr. DeSoto. You won't be able to open your mouth for 24 hours, but then you will, and you'll be protected for the rest of your life. The fox was just flabbergasted. He didn't know what to do. And finally he said, through clenched teeth, thank you very much. And he got up, he walked across the room, down the stairs and outside. And when the door shut, Dr. DeSoto and Mrs. DeSoto looked at each other. And he said, you know, I think we should take the rest of the day off. And she said, I agree. He said, you know, today we have outfoxed the fox. That's Dr. DeSoto. Okay.
That's good.
So, I think, what time is it? It's 8:14. Yeah, I've got a hike tomorrow, so I'm going to remove spotlight off of me. And I think I'm going to stop the recording too.